Hello and welcome. New airlines are landing in India. Air Asia is going to start very shortly. Singapore Airlines, India is going to start too. What does this mean for this market? Does it mean it's good for you, the flyer, or the potential flyer? Ayaz, let's begin with you. You've been on many flights recently. What's the experience like?
Well, look, I think I was in a happier frame of mind when there were more airlines to choose from.
Okay.
It obviously affected the fares and gave me more competitive pricing.
Right.
So there is that element even now.
Okay.
But I think from a consumer's point of view, if there's a wider choice to choose from, then I feel more empowered.
Okay, so that's the starting point. But we've also got guests Jitender, Bhargava, author of the book Descent of Air India. We've also got Dubey, head of Aerospace at the practice at KPMG, and we've also got Devesh Agarwal of Bangalore Aviation joining us from Bangalore, and Amber from Delhi. Thank you all for being here. And Jitender, of course, joins us in our studios in Mumbai. So the question that we are asking is, all these airlines landing in India, is it good? Is the buzz going to come back to India's aviation sector? Jitender, Bhargava?
Well, I am at least one who believes that because India has been working without an aviation policy, ad hoc decisions are being taken, airlines are being given license on an ad hoc manner, without regard to the total aviation scenario.
Okay.
Good from the customer's perspective, that passengers will have a choice, and in the short run, lower fares. But let me take you back. When Kingfisher was in the market and we had abundance of choice available, fares were low. What happened? With Kingfisher's demise led to shortage of capacity, higher fares for the market, and it's been prevailing for the last two years almost now. Now, what is going to happen when Air Asia comes in? They've already announced that our fares will be about 35% lower. Now, imagine a scenario when you have about 75–80% load factors that airlines were doing some months ago, yet making losses with the exception of Indigo. How will they make or recover their costs when you are going to be forced into lowering your fares when Air Asia has it?
Okay, so you're saying
now,
it's
when
bad,
you have that scenario,
now
it will lead to a demise of another carrier. So you're back to square one of having the same number of airlines.
Okay.
So unless you have a policy which ensures A, systemic corrections in the market, fuel, costs, airports, etc. Unless you attend to it, it's good to welcome an airline, but then don't forget that you're also going to be writing an obituary of another airline.
Okay. Amber, how do you see this? Let's get your perspective here.
I tend to agree with excuse me, what Mr. Bhargava just said. We need to have more clarity, transparency, a clear-cut policy. But at the same time, we also support India becoming a better place to do business in. World Bank ranks us as 34th, it's a lousy number, 134th in terms of ease of doing business. So, and aviation is a very critical part of the economy. People fly not just for flying, but basically to do business, but to do tourism. So if we look at the overall interest of India, we have to open our doors. We have protected Air India for almost 67 years, but that has not made them a global player like an Emirates or a Qatar flying to 30+ destinations. So I guess it's time now to do a little step change and open the doors, allow foreign carriers to come in unhindered. So we're supporting almost 100% FDI and removal of this 520 and all kinds of restrictions. So that let the growth test come and play here, just like in other sectors.
Okay, Devesh, let me get your viewpoint. Very quick one. I mean, a new airline coming after a while, potentially two, because Singapore Airlines is saying it will launch in September, October. So what does this mean from a flyer's perspective and for the broader health of the industry?
Govind, I partly agree with what both Mr. Bhargava and Mr. Dubey are saying, that there is a complete lack of clear policy when it comes to airlines in India. But in a way, I would like to point out a simple statistic. Compared to March last year to March this year, the passenger, as you know, airline performance is measured in what's called revenue passenger kilometers. It has gone down 0.7%, but capacity has gone up by almost 8%. What you're seeing is a repeat of 2008, where airlines, essentially started devouring their young just to survive, and you're seeing that with SpiceJet today. just having sale after sale, just in order to keep some cash flow going. So adding more capacity to the market initially will be great for the consumer. It will drive down the fares. But as we saw when Kingfisher did die, ultimately it's the Indian taxpayer who's being left, holding the bag in terms of the bad debts owed to the state public bank. And of course, if you recall, when Kingfisher did die, there was a spike in fares for about a year.
Right. So let me flip the question around and back to Jitender Bhargava here. So, yes, the numbers don't look very good. Jet Airways is at a 1,500 crore loss. Spice is at 1,477 crore loss. And they were all making profits just 2 years ago.
No,
effectively.
it isn't true.
2011.
No, they weren't.
2011, they were in profits.
No, let's put it this way. They were making marginal profit.
Yeah.
Let's look at the total scenario. First, I've got to challenge the facts given out by Amber. A, are you going to take a view on a commercial way, or are you going to take a nationalistic view? First. Now, when you look at it from the commercial perspective, very good. As I said earlier, more airlines, better for the passengers. But ultimately, airlines bleed. So what we are basically wanting aviation sector to be is a robust airline. A, the government policies first have to be changed, made more conducive, and the environment that you operate has to be conducive to profitability, which is now, when you look at it from the scenario of more airlines coming in, now what happens? World over, you don't have very many airlines or being given licenses every 2-3 years. You have accumulated losses, as you have said. Now, you have on one side existing airlines with huge debt, huge losses on the balance sheet. On the other side, you have AirAsia coming in and Tata Singapore Airlines coming in with fresh balance sheet. Now, if they were to be aggressive in the market, tell me, how will the existing set of airlines compete with them?
So my question is, why should we bother about that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You can take a short-term view. As I said, take a strictly commercial view and not a nationalistic view. And my contention is that when an airline folds up, what does it leave? Jobless. India's rating goes down. Leasing becomes costlier for the aviation industry. India's image worldwide goes down. Now, are you going to be ignoring this fact? Now, don't take a short-term view. Amber also said government was protecting Air India. I would like to challenge this kind of philosophy that government was challenging Air India. Air India was performing several social factors. It isn't a 100% commercial airline. Now, you got to look at it. Now, let's take Jet Airways. No, you talked about Jet Airways. Jet Airways, Indigo, good airlines, efficient airline, privately run airline, no less of government interference. Let's put it this way. Now, what happens? So it is not per se the efficiency element which is responsible for poor performance of airlines, but the environment in which you're operating. So the first correction is to be the environmental. Systemic corrections have to be done. 2 years from now, let me tell you, and I can say so, AirAsia is a good airline, nobody disputes it. Air India is aggressive in the market, nobody disputes it. But what happens? They have withdrawn services from Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, into India, Calcutta, Mumbai, Delhi, etc. Why? Because the operational costs are high. They are going to be facing the same kind of heat here. What happens 2 years from now? When government decides to give a license to another airline to come into the market, AirAsia will do exactly what the Federation of Indian Airlines representing existing airlines is doing, opposing the entry of a new player.
So let me look at it a little differently. And Amber, let me bring you back here. What are the 3 or 4 reasons why we need more competition in the industry? Because, I mean, and there are some things which are not necessarily going in the passenger's favor, right? We are assuming that quality of service is the best, which it perhaps isn't. We are assuming that the fares that the passengers are getting are the best, which perhaps they're not. And for instance, I feel that, I mean, I'm not seeing much difference between, let's say, winter fares 2013-14 into summer fares of 2014, because fares seem to be holding, which means that, I mean, clearly things are on more weighted towards the supply side rather than the demand side. What else are the other factors why we should be looking at a more competitive environment, and let's approach it like that?
Absolutely. In fact, before I start, just a couple of clarifications responding to Mr. Bhargava. First of all, I think everybody on this call is nationalistic, and we all want to see India number 3, as we say, by 2020, and inshallah number 1 by 2030. That's the dream all people on this call believe. So our approaches might be different.
Yeah.
Number two, also on the protection of Air India, yes.
But you know something, Amber, if I may say so, I don't think I'm being nationalistic here when it comes to aviation. I think I'm just saying that how can me as the consumer in this country get a good deal? I think nationalism, to me at least in this context, is secondary. But go ahead nevertheless.
Yeah, absolutely. All I'm saying is, at the end of the day, aviation, if you see it in isolation, we need to protect those 5 or 6 entrepreneurs who run this.
Sure.
But is the interest of those 5 people the real definition of national interest? I would question that. Number two, it's also under the presumption that the moment an Arab Gulf carrier or an ASEAN carrier enters India, they're going to demolish Indian carriers. That again is a big assumption. And in sector after sector, whether it's banking or telecom or automotive, we've seen a Toyota also sells and a Tata also sells. Okay, and SBI also survives and HSBC also survives. Each one has its own strengths. And any of these airlines which also come to India, they're not going to be bringing in thousands and thousands of Gulf expatriates here. It's all going to be Indian. Almost 90 to 95%. Maybe at the top position, maybe the CEO, the CFO could be a Gulf person or an ASEAN person. But 95% of the population will be, the employees will be Indian. So the knowledge, the best practices all come back to India. That's number two. Number three, you asked about why competition is better. There's no better answer than to just compare with what happened in telecom. The moment you have competition, yes, some will stay, some will die, only the strong will survive. The others will either be bought over at a good price, or they'll become niche players operating only in certain parts of India. That's the difficult way a market works. Some will survive, some will go. Overall, the country gains. And today, once upon a time, I remember, just about a decade back, we were thinking that if we can just touch the 100 million mark, my wife was with Vodafone, and 100 million subscribers were supposed to be epitome, Mount Everest in telecom. 10 years later, we've just crossed 900 million. So 9 times what was supposed to be the best one. And this is the sort of shock therapy we need in the aviation sector. Govind?
Right. So let me put now let me ask you another question, Amber, which is again to do with overall capacity. Now, I think the fact is that even Devesh was mentioning that growth has sort of slowed down for a while. Now, I was saying that occupancy, for instance, has come down, obviously because capacity has gone up. It's come down from 75.6 to 71.7. So let's say on an average from about 76% to about 71%. In some airlines, the occupancy drop has been quite substantial. Again, perhaps due to capacity addition. So, are we in a sense peaking out in terms of what this industry can absorb, or how many passengers can actually fly?
No, not at all. Because see, when we say overcapacity, we should remember the capacity roughly remains the same. It's a constant animal. Every year, the capacity will only increase by 15, 20, or 40 aircraft. Capacity follows a certain straight line. It is the demand which goes up and down depending on seasonalities and the pricing of the tickets, etc., and government policy. So I fully agree with Mr. Bhargava that we also need a shock therapy on the cost side. Nearly 80%, whether it's fuel or airport charges or salaries or MRO, all these are pretty much fixed. And each of these line items can actually be worked upon, whether it's fuel or MRO or airport charges. And maybe salaries is something which we can't do much about, but the other things, which actually add up to almost 70% of the ticket price, all can be worked upon. So these go hand in hand. It's not either or. The first clean up or reduce the structural high costs in this industry, and then go for liberalization. And on one hand, open the gates and bring in, let the fresh air come in, let these new players come in and give the incumbents a hard run for their money. And at the same time, we also engage in CII, CP, AmCham, and various other industry bodies. They are pressurizing not only the central government, but also the state government to reduce the huge taxes on MRO and ATM. And we're seeing with some results with the eastern states. They have already started reducing ATM. The biggest surprise of this is now.
Right.
And the very day they reduced the ATF from 30% to 0% in Bhargava, within 4 weeks, Indigo has put 4 flights there. So there is a connect. And we are spreading that message. I think everybody on the call is connected to politicians and IAS officers and decision makers. And I'm sure sooner or later, the structural cost part also will be taken care of. That is what will increase the passengers and the occupancy. Govind?
Okay, Ayaz.
So I'm taking a position, Jitendra, that it's in the national interest if a consumer like me benefits. It's not devoid or it's not disruptive of the national interest as you see it. But you mentioned that this can only work if there are systemic changes. What are, maybe can you give us 3 or 4 pointers as to what those?
Plentiful.
No.
First thing will be,
Don't write a book.
We must have a minister who is a minister for Indian civil aviation. What have ministers in the recent past have been outsourcing the Indian civil aviation to Gulf carriers, earlier European carriers. Now, why is it so? As I said, the operational costs are very high, which are not allowing Indian carriers to make profit and thereby expand. Correct it. You'll always say, as Amber said, it helps in boosting tourism. The reality is, if you go back 20 years, from what tourism was in India and what it is now, in proportion to the quantum jump in capacity, it hasn't materialized. Let me explain to you. Now, when Air India or Indian Airlines were operating, the fares were not as high as they are today. Please, let's not also overlook this fact. Now, when we are talking in it, as I said, you can take a strictly commercial perspective and say, I don't bother about it. When Ajit Singh, and he's still the civil aviation minister, I spoke in one of the meetings and I said, the best thing would be, since there are farmers committing suicide, let's give up farming in India and import wheat from abroad. It will be cheaper for a customer. So you don't necessarily look at from the customer perspective at every stage and for everything. There is a nationalistic angle which Amber will not look at it because you represent KPMG. But if you look at it strictly from the country's perspective, there is a need for Indian carriers to be made robust. What has happened in China? 3 of the top profit-making carriers are Chinese carriers in the world. Why have they done it? Now, there is a need for making corrections. Take a simplistic view. Emirates, Etihad, Qatar can all come in and do it and benefit. Hold it.
Can I join issue with you on that?
Look, Govind, there is a need for it. Let me explain to you. I'm not saying passengers' interests should be overlooked. They are essential. But equally essential is that you create an environment for Indian carriers to thrive and grow. Now, what has happened is Jet Airways, India's top carrier at one time, right? But do you hear of Naresh Goyal any longer? He has ceded the position to Etihad. Now, is it a matter of pride for us?
No, maybe not. But I'm saying by protecting him, would things have been better?
No, I'm not talking about protection at all. Please remember.
But this is
I'm only saying, given an environment that Emirates enjoy in Dubai, Etihad enjoys in Abu Dhabi, to the Indian carriers. Let them have the same kind of facility. Now, you can't say Indian carriers will be paying almost 40–50% more for
domestic
ATF.
No. Domestic market, and look, they are not. There is no domestic market for Etihad and Emirates.
Simplistic view. The balance sheet is one. It doesn't get divided between a domestic portion and an international portion for Jet and Etihad, etc. Now, imagine when you are looking at it. Now, they have bled. They have got loans on their balance sheet. They are servicing the debt. Right? Now, what are the counterparts doing? Flush with funds, government benefits flowing the way, they will naturally steal the thunder. Now, are you going to be allowing, because they are enjoying a certain benefit, let them thrive, let them demolish Indian carriers? I'm not, for one, going to agree on that kind of a stance. No, government, as I said, must have first a minister who takes care of Indian civil aviation. B, systemic corrections must be corrected. He made a mention that Bhargava has zero sale tax and other kind of a thing. All these are corrections that are needed. Now, but Tata Singapore Airlines, look at the irony of Indian aviation now. Tata's legendary vision started the civil aviation in India. Now, you in your opening remarks referred to it as Singapore Airlines. You did not even use the word Tata Singapore Airlines.
But that's what I mean.
Though the rule of the country is, the law is that a foreign airline cannot hold majority stake. But what are we talking about? Tony Fernandez speaks on behalf of AirAsia India. Tata Singapore Airlines is speaking about it. Where is the Indian component about it? And we don't even feel repulsive of the whole thing. No. I feel very sad the way aviation sector is being handled.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you on that. But before that, Devesh, I think so. Before it gets into too much of a policy, bouquets and brickbats. What is the?
I've been listening patiently, Govind. Just give me a little moment. I need to respond to both Mr. Bhargava and Mr. Dubey.
Yes.
My first question is, why in the blue blazes do we even require a Minister of Civil Aviation?
Okay.
I think all of us are, including you, will agree that the bane of Indian aviation has been the politician, whether it was the minister or the MP.
Okay, so that's point number one.
Very right. I agree with it.
Point, yeah. Next point or next question.
The first question, the first point was that.
Yeah.
The second point was I wanted to see, like now Amber said, oh, we are adding 30, 40 aircraft a year. Well, if you're adding 30, 40 aircraft into a population of 300, 400, that's a 10% growth. If your traffic is shrinking by 0.7% and your capacity is increasing by 10%, I mean, this is a capital intensive industry.
Absolutely.
And lastly, we talk about best practices and coming into, the country. Let us look at the fact that in the last 20 years of airline privatization in India, what is the total hit on the banks? Jet Airways still owes some $1.6 billion, which is more than what Kingfisher owed before it went belly up. Air India, let's not even discuss it.
Absolutely.
They are like 40,000+ crores into debt. That is more than 1 crore per employee. I mean, if we pay off every employee 1 crore, we still will not be able to bail out Air India. So it's a ridiculous number.
Yeah, I got that point. So what's so the Air India protection is one. What's the next point?
The last point is, as much as we talk about the Gulf carriers in this year's Dubai Air Show, the value of the orders that they placed is greater than the value of India's tax collection for this year, this budgeted year. That is the value of the size of their aviation industry.
$200 billion, huh?
Okay. Okay.
$206 billion, which translates to roughly about 12 lakh crore rupees. And actually, India's the tax revenue is somewhere in the range of around 12 or 12.5 or something like that.
Your point being, Devesh,
staggering the statistic that these three puny little island countries can place aircraft orders greater than our entire tax collection of this nation. I mean, we are essentially giving out everything to these people. We talk about creating best practices. The moment, the pilots are getting trained overseas, we really don't have any schools in India. What is the aviation expertise that we have brought into India? It is virtually nothing. It is all a very fancy mirage.
So, Devesh, the question we are still asking is, I mean, all this doesn't matter to me if I'm a consumer, if I'm a regular passenger flying between Bombay or Delhi or Bombay and Bangalore, right? This is for someone else to sort out. If I were to be...
Ultimately, Govind, you are paying taxes. It is how efficiently your taxes are being used. If your taxes are going year on year, there is a 30,000 crore bailout for Air India. Work that out. The value of the bailout for Air India is greater than the value of the Indian Health Department. The budget for this year for the Department of Health is smaller than the bailout to Air India.
Devesh, if you can just allow me to say a line here, please, let's not hammer Air India on it. Air India's losses are not on account of operational reasons. They are for multiple reasons, because it was government owned. Government took certain ridiculous decisions.
Being a part of India, you will rise to the defense of Air India.
No, I'm talking as a citizen of India, please. I'm talking as a citizen. Now, when you have, as I said earlier, if you have total transparency, you have a policy, proper government decision making, aviation industry will be better off. I gave the example of China. Now, there is no reason why India cannot replicate that kind of a thing.
My question is, you talked about the Indian Minister of Civil Aviation. Do we even have a CMD for Air India? We just have a CMD who protects his gaddi till he gets posted back to some IAS posting.
Please, let's not look at the last decade. It's been Babu-run airline, which is more kind of loyalty is to the minister, to the political leadership, rather than to the airline. Let's look at airlines' heydays when it was managed by a professional airline. I brought this out in my book. Please remember this.
And read it again if you haven't. Okay, but let me come back to you. I think so. If we were to spin forward now, we are obviously looking at an environment where we are going to see more competition. It's an environment where there are some airlines which are already somewhat constrained because of financial reasons or balance sheet reasons. What should be the way forward? I mean, and finally, the reason one is the bottom line being, or the outcome that one is looking at, is a healthy market where passengers get good service and obviously get the benefit of good fares.
Well, that's a good question. But before we start, just a couple of clarifications. I think there was some mention made of stop thinking just like KPMG and more like a nationalist. Let me just show our friend Mr. Bhargava, who you later said. We are actually working with all the 5 Indian carriers. We are auditors, who are in Jet and Indigo, and also internal auditors for others, including Air India. So every time anything happens which hurts us as well. They are our esteemed clients, and we hope to be their service provider for a long time to come. So the view we are taking is actually, ideally, if I were to take a commercial hat, I would actually say things which are actually in the interest of Indian carriers. We are talking in terms of interest of the whole nation, and not just, I've been saying earlier as well around.
Yeah, fair enough. I think we got that point, yeah.
Number 2, now you talked about things to do. First and foremost, as already been brought out by Mr. Bhargava, we have to reduce the structural cost in this sector. Anybody, even if Emirates, so that we have a Qatar come in, or the ASEAN carriers, there's a full cost structure. Because they cannot be importing fuel from outside. Yes, I mean, some of the incoming international flights can carry some, but even if they operate on the domestic side, they have to buy Indian fuel and pay the Indian taxes. So on the tax front, that's first and foremost. Number 2, we have to remove this 5/20 so that Indian carriers, especially the new ones which come in, can also fly night time to international routes and have a greater utilization of the aircraft. Number 3, we have to start promoting the no-frills airports, as we have no-frills airlines. We also have to expand the take. Right now, we see the same carriers applying to the same locations, having a blood bath, and then finally leaving the same airport, say a Bhopal or a Jabalpur or a Lucknow, to one carrier so that they can make more money with the same fixed cost, and they move on to some other location. So we need to expand the case. And these no-frills airports, another thing we are pushing the ministry, and hopefully something good should happen. Last is on the MRO front. Almost 18% of the cost of an airline is on maintenance. So empty aircraft going along with the crew to a foreign location, taking money from you and me rupees, converting to dollars, and then sending abroad and bringing the empty plane back. All this cost can be avoided if you just give tax parity in India and create jobs and government revenue in the country. So I would just stop there because the 3-4 big ticket I think we need to do on the airline, on the regional airports, on the MRO, and on the passenger.
Okay, got it. Thanks. A lot of questions here. Let me try and sum up because obviously I don't think we have time to read all of them. One is of course to do with the fact that the airline, like an airline like Kingfisher came and shut down and also pulled down the whole sector, because of which the sector is not recovered. Will AirAsia have a negative impact in the longer run, though in short terms passengers may benefit from lower prices? So we've addressed that already. The second question is, why is the national carrier not turning around? It's almost like a government venture that's just meant to bleed. That we will not go into because that's a separate discussion. Should we be reviving it more? Okay, Shruti asked, so will airline prices come down? Will air ticket prices come down? No amount of effort seems to be ensuring that airlines bring the prices down. Why are they not coming down now, right now?
They cannot, because airlines, as I said, doing 70% load factor, which means 30 seats per aircraft going vacant per flight.
70% is not bad in good normal times.
Airline Indigo has been doing 85-88% earlier.
Okay.
Now, when you have 70%, the fares are reasonable at the moment. Let's put it this way.
Okay.
I was in US last month. The fares for a 50-minute flight are in the range of $250 to $300. Please remember one thing.
Okay.
Now, Indian fares, even at this level, do not recover cost. So when AirAsia says we'll offer 35% lower fares, now government has to come in and say, show me your cost plus 1. You make profit of 1 rupee, but show me your cost. Now you can't, because you have got deep pockets, give lower fares, which are not sustainable, but you will edge out competition in the meantime.
So what?
Now, which is detrimental to, as I said, airline and country's interest. Unemployment, you've seen it, Kingfisher, banks losing money.
But the reverse is you're in a way protecting him from, I mean, you're creating a protection on the other side.
What is the loyalty of Tony Fernandez to the Indian market? Let's put it this way. 3 years down the line, he accumulates losses. He will simply walk out of the industry and says, oh, I'm ceasing operations. There is no commitment to India. But in the meantime, you would have ruined the Indian carriers. Now take a nationalistic view.
So let me put another question then. Are you saying that even a small carrier like an AirAsia, if it comes in today, can put pressure on all the other carriers? Because AirAsia is a very small operation.
Let's put it this way. What is SpiceJet's market share? 19 point something, which means 1 out of 5 passengers travel. When they announce a sale, what do you read in the next day? Indigo, Jet, Air India have all followed. So that's kind of a rat race. Everybody is trying to protect their market share. Now, once you have this kind of a philosophy, short-term interest, you are overlooking the long-term interest. Devesh very rightly said, you are getting your cash flows by offering sales every 1 month kind of a thing. Ultimately, you've got to pay. How will SpiceJet earn enough revenue to service its debt, pay employees, etc.? So I can say that very confidently. 6 months after these carriers have come, one Indian carrier will fold up. Take it from me, it will happen, and then you can't say it was in national interest. And as I said the other thing, 2 years down the line, when AirAsia has accumulated losses and government decides to add one more, they will be singing the same tune what Indigo, Jet, SpiceJet, Air India are singing today at the entry of AirAsia.
Okay, so we've run out of time. So I mean, I don't know if we should close with that not so optimistic projection from Jitender Bhargava that you will see the demise of one airline. Okay, it's a realistic one. Yes, the fact is that data does suggest that something similar could happen, but who it will be, we don't know. But that's the free market for you if we were to go down that route. We're of course going to continue this discussion very soon as the market for Indian aviation gets heated up and starts buzzing once again with new airlines coming in. Thank you, Devesh Agarwal. Thank you, Dubey. Thank you, Ayaz, Memon, and Jitender Bhargava for being on the India Hangout. We're going to be back.